All right, good morning, everybody. We are live once again. I have my brother, friend, fellow advocate, fellow author, fellow everything, Anthony Gangi. He is in the virtual studio with me. I have a question for him this morning. We're going to get started with a question. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, you're joining us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you're at, drop them in the comments. We'll see them. We'll come in. We'll try to answer them the best that we can. Anthony, I got a question from Gavin Wortman. He left us on a comment on one of my videos not too long ago, and he wants to know, how do you maintain control of your area, your housing unit, when you feel that the other shifts, the other officers, so the officers you relieve, the officers that relieve you, don't enforce, he says, the rules at all. But I think more commonly is the officers don't enforce the same rules the same way that you do. So he wants to know, how can he feels like when he comes in, he's got to restart every time, relaying down the rules. So what do you got for Gavin this morning?
Wow, you went right into the main topic.
That's right. That's right.
So, I mean, obviously, working with a partner, you're looking, partner shifts, whatever it is, you're looking for some level of consistency. I believe consistency gives the inmates a level of expectation. So Gavin's question spot on, because if you don't have that consistency, whether it's with your partner, between shifts, with your supervisor, you're going to have inmates that are just kind of do whatever the hell they want. And in some extent, it depends on which person I can play the most. So like, you know, I know I would first start seeing that if I wrote an inmate a charge, let's say a charge that required, I don't know, 4 hours extra duty, which had to be served straight, not through segments. I'm talking about straight, or maybe an early lockdown of 4 hours, you know, and let's say I wrote the charge towards the end of my shift. So I'm hoping that the next shift would carry it out. Later on, I would find out that it wasn't carried out because the person who was on the subsequent shift would allow the inmate to go out. But then when you look, you would see that, you know, the time in was marked on the logbook that the person that did it. And who tells you that they get to live life from that staff member is the inmate.
Right.
The inmate will, you know, I guess because it's like a tit for tat thing. Hey, remember you wrote me up yesterday and you expected me to serve it? Well, your partner kind of let me live life. And of course, a lot of us, instead of talking to that partner or that the person who does your relief, we wind up just getting disgruntled, you know, and just kind of cutting this person off. So what I would do, honestly, is kind of do the opposite of that. I would encourage communication first. So when you go to, so like if I was a bidded officer and this was my housing unit 5 days a week, I'm going to be invested in this.
Right.
Which means, you know, I'm here to find out what we can do consistently to make sure that we all are invested in the running of this unit. Now, if I came in for 1 or 2 days, don't get me wrong, there are still some expectations I want when I'm there that one day, but I don't know how invested I would be in the follow-up. You know, this is 5 days a week. So not only am I invested in, if I have a partner on the other side, my partner, I'm invested with the supervisors that are overseeing this area.
Right.
I'm invested with the shift coming in and the shift that I relieve as well. You know, so again, consistency has to go through all shifts. So at one point, you're going to have a dialogue so everybody knows what's expected. So if you're not consistent with your partner or you're not consistent with the shifts, then you can't expect the population to kind of understand what it is that's expected of them. And trust and believe, if there's inconsistency, inmates will always go to what favors them the most. So first, right off the bat, Gavin, is you got to have communication and everybody's be on the same page, because don't forget too, when it comes to a housing unit, if everybody's kind of senior staff, there's going to be some level of discretion that's going to be employed. So the consistency comes from where that discretion is, you know, because I'll give you an example. I can have an inmate that's problematic on my shift, you know, but may not be problematic on yours.
Right.
And we got to make sure that if they're problematic on mine, you know, yes, I know they may not be problematic as yours, but, you know, on the same page, if I write something up and you have to help me enforce it because I'm not in, I expect that level of commitment with that. But first, you got to start with communication, set the levels of expectations on all levels. And then one last thing, the supervisor is in the main position to make sure that consistency is enforced. because they're at the higher level. So, definitely you want to have the supervisor. What I would do is this. I would start with your partner if you have one immediately, because that's where it starts. If you can't get consistency with your partner, you can't ever expect consistency between shifts or with the supervisor. So have a dialogue with your partner and the supervisor, and then kind of discuss the expectations, what are reasonable, what isn't reasonable, what's expected, and then go out into the world that way. That's what I would do first. It's not snitching. It's just, what do we expect from each other? So I would have dialogue. Communication's key.
And I think there's like you said, there's several factors that play into this. So is this my housing unit or am I substitute teaching? Right. So if this is your housing unit, you're invested in it. And it is going to be more difficult with people that are just floating, covering holidays, covering days off, things like that. They're not going to care as much as you who, have been working over days and weeks and months to get this housing unit under control and run it the way you want to run it. The other thing is, what are you talking about by enforcing the rules, right? So like when you get into officer discretion, is the officer that you're relieving, a 20-year guy that exercises more discretion and you're, 7 months on the job and you're really still hammering policy and procedure and everything. So, for example, a lot of things that I run into is this. I'll come into a housing unit, I have rules, right? If you don't live on the top tier, you don't walk on the top tier, right? I don't want you in there. You don't go in anybody else's room. You're not doing pull-ups off the steps, those kind of things, right? That when I come into another housing unit, I see, and then you just have to lay out your expectations. I mean, part of doing, your job might actually just be kind of doing your job, because it may not be the inmate. So if you say, hey man, stop walking on the top tier. Well, Officer Gangi lets me walk on the top tier when oh, really? Well, you know what? You say, well, number one, he probably doesn't, because I know Officer Gangi. I've worked with him for a long time. Number two, Officer Gangi's not here today, so get off the top tier. I mean, that's my expectation today. So, you can't just expect to go into a housing unit and say, everything's going to run the way it ran exactly the next day. I mean, I learned early on in my career, that was one of my frustrations at the beginning. 5 days a week, you come in, you can develop some consistency. And especially in a county jail setting, when I would come back off my weekend, I'd have 10 new guys. And they'd act like they've never been in jail before. They've act like they've never been told how to do anything before. So you just had to redo it. Right. And it's not, again, what's the rule violation? And you got to understand that they are the inmate population. They're going to try to manipulate you, right? So they're gonna say, hey, so and so lets us do this. They're going to say, hey, yeah, they let us play cards in the room together and stuff like that. Part of that is just whatever. But if you do, and I agree with Anthony on this, but number one is just talk to the person you're relieving. Hey, man, when I come in, I'm seeming to have a problem with these guys. They're congregating here. They're walking on the top tier. I don't know if that's what you let them do or not, but it's something that I don't let them do. And if you don't mind, man, can we just carry this over? And I kind of talked about this before last week, but we had one of our more problematic housing units, and we had day shift and night shift for a solid 18 months that was consistent with each other with the rules, and we had almost zero issues out of that housing unit. And when I say zero issues, I mean, you still have the day-to-day stuff, but major problems, major concerns, we didn't, because we were all on the same page. And that all started with briefing each other, having a conversation with each other. And here's the other thing, guys. If you're relieving me in a housing unit and you want to have a conversation, you want a briefing, you want to do that, then you have to show up more than 2 minutes before your shift starts. That's another question I get a lot. Well, the officer that relieves me doesn't come in. So I say, forget it. And I don't give him a briefing. I just leave. Well, that's kind of a problem too. But so it's respect each other and a little bit of communication. Did I miss anything?
No, you're right. I mean, I wish we would go back to overlapping. I know some states still do it because there is the importance of that exchange of information, because that's what brings the consistency, especially between shifts. But I think what you're saying is spot on. It's, in order for us to give levels of expectation to the inmates, we have to have levels of expectations between ourselves. So we do have that trust. I love what you said. I even mentioned in my book, the manipulation book, is that inmates will circumvent staff. Oh, there it is. Yeah, thanks. Inmates will.
I always keep it close to me. I have in my right hand inmate manipulation. On my left hand, I have my Glock. So
well, then
just
look at this.
Whatever one I need. Hey, all right.
So we're on the same page. I have all my books here. That's actually in my front row, so it's easier to find.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. So once we have that level of expectation for each other, and guys, by the way, that level of expectation also travels up. As a frontline person, I have some expectations I expect from my supervisor. I don't. The supervisor can always be a resource for an inmate as well. So we want to make sure that the supervisor knows, because here, I mean, we're talking about just partners. I mean, somehow or another, to me, yes, this is a concern, but if I have a supervisor that's inconsistent with me, that's a bigger concern, because that person has power over the decisions I have the potential to make. So having that level of expectation also set with that supervisor, that's why I said right before Will went in, is that you should have that supervisor at a table and discuss what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. Because I want the supervisor to understand what we also expect from them. And I didn't do it directly, but they're hearing this. And because the last thing you want is wherever that, here's what it is. Because Gavin, it's a great question, because wherever that inconsistency is where the inmate is going to play. You have to understand that. So when you leave that level of inconsistency somewhere, whether it's between me and Will, I run a more tougher unit. Maybe Will runs an easier unit, or vice versa. Or me and Will run a great unit, but here comes Sergeant such and such who runs a light unit. So the concern is wherever that inconsistency is, that's where the inmates are going to try to maneuver and divide. So it's very important that we do stay connected and consistent, because that inconsistency could be our weakest link.
Well, let me segue right into this, because I was going to talk about this anyway today, and I think this is a beautiful place to put this in. And in your book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded, and if you guys don't got it, then you should go get it. It's Christmas time, so buy 2 copies, right? But it says it talks about, and I love this. It talks about, and like I said, as a veteran, as a guy who is pretty confident, all of those things of what I do. But I learned something in this book. And one of the things that I did early on, and you touch on this in the book, and I really never looked at it this way, and I see this all the time, is the internal versus external response. And so when we're talking about this, and we're talking about the inmates, and you're telling them, hey, no, you can't do this because you say this, and let me read this here. It says, basically the inmate says, hey, can I do this? You say, no, you can't do that. You can't walk in the top tier. You can't go into other people's room. You can't. And you say, no, why can't I do that? The inmate is testing to see if the response provided by staff will give them a chance to maneuver. An external justification will be when staff responds by stating an outside source for the refusal. For example, my sergeant doesn't like when you do that, or Lieutenant Smith said this to me last week. And I hear this all the time. And I said it early on in my career, right? Well, no, hey, can we do this today? No, you can't do that. Sergeant Gangi's on the floor, and he don't like that. All right. Well, so what that does is that, well, you tell them what the difference is, because that's a huge deal, man. Well, and I don't think people understand that.
I love how you were just able to apply that just now. That's the cool part. So guys, as we
it's the only part. It's the only part in the book that I could apply. I read all 3,000 pages of this.
3,000 pages. Yeah, right. So the thing is that one thing about our external versus internal is that, believe it or not, any type of external justification is considered a weakness. So if I'm a supervisor and I give you an order to kind of give a directive to certain things, let's say your housing unit's in disarray today. Just not looking good. So as a supervisor, I walk in, I do the right thing. I don't correct you in front of the inmates. I pull you aside and say, listen, man, I'm not liking how I see things. When I come back, I expect things to be a little bit different, because, guys, a sign of a good-looking housing unit says a lot. A bad-looking housing unit also says a lot.
Right.
So now I leave, and I left with giving you that perception of authority that you still need to go back and carry it out. Now, when you go back and you have that interaction with the inmates, to let them know this is what has to be done. And then you express it as, why are we doing it this way, Officer Gangi? Well, because the sergeant got on my ass today, and look what you just did. You just gave away the perception of authority that I just gave you, and you gave it away back to me. So why don't I just come back and run your fucking unit? Excuse my language, but it's true. If an inmate decides to question it, it's because I said so.
Well, I don't think people understand that, and it doesn't seem like I'm sure people there's a difference here, right? Some people think that I don't want to tell the inmates no, so I'm going to push it off. There's a portion of people that do that, but I think the majority of us are just saying it so they can deflect responsibility for what's being said, right? They don't want that flack, and that's why a lot of sergeants, when they come into the unit, they get hit with all these questions. It's because the officer in there is saying, no, so-and-so don't want to do it. So-and-so don't want to do that. So when you say no, because somebody else said no, man, that honestly kind of makes you sound weak.
Yeah. I was just going to say that it limits your belief in the directive. That's very ethical, by the way. It's ethical. Why would you not want to run a good, clean housing unit? So it limits the fact, one, is that you don't believe in the directive. That's one thing. You're tentative and you're weak because, you're giving inmates an ethical order. So my question is this: if you can't give out that order, I would never want you to be in a position where it's emergent and you got to give out orders that really matter in the long run. Or imagine this. Imagine this is the type of person that we promote. A person that's never taken any level of responsibility, even for the most simplest of orders of clean this housing unit. Now, I want to rank you. You're not even ready to run a freaking housing unit, let alone get ranked, because it starts literally with the responsibility of the task that in front of you. That supervisor did everything correct by pulling you aside and saying, hey, listen, this is probably how the dialogue should have came out. You got to run your shit. Walking around, your unit's in a mess. I'm not here to run your shit for you. It's embarrassing for me. So I'm not even going to finish my tour today. I'm going to have you, and I'm going to be back up. And I'll make an extra trip today, but I'll be back up in about an hour. I expect things to change. Now, this is done in private. This is done, in an effort to say, hey, listen, you still go out there, maintain that perception of authority, and let's see some progress here. Now, all of a sudden, what happens? You go out there, and then you give that perception of authority back. It's foolish, and it happens, Will.
This is what happens. So you leave. The supervisor leaves. All right, guys, listen, Sarge came in here, said the housing unit looks like shit. We got to clean it up. And that's the other thing. You have to think about and guys, it's not hard. Saying no is not, I'm going to say this, saying no is hard because you have to say no 1,000 times a day. It's like they'll ask the same question for years and years and years. But here's the deal. If you establish yourself as a person that's going to say no, that's going to stand behind that no, and that like Anthony says, believes in that directive, right? You are never going to walk on a top tier when I'm here ever. Not on Monday, not on Saturday, not on no day. And I'm always going to tell you, no, eventually they're going to stop doing that, right? Now, some people you're always going to get tested. But what I'm saying is if you are a consistent officer and you can back up the things that you say, then you're going to have less of a problem. Trust me, the people that hem-haw, that push off the responsibility, man, those are the people that are getting run in the housing units, right? So in the beginning, you know what? Going into a housing unit, laying down your expectations, talking to the inmates, telling them, we train our new people on your first day. You call them inmates out into the day room. You tell them what your expectations are, right? And that may not work in every setting, but I did that coming in, and they, okay. But then you back that up and you enforce those, and then you're fine. And if it's your consistent housing unit, if you're in there every day and you're taking ownership of that housing unit, then things will fall in place. Things will start to fall in place.
You said something too, and it's actually in the book. You glossed right over, but it's actually in the book as well. Is that, believe it or not, that internal justification to make your orders evergreen? Because if the sergeant's not there, your unit's still going to be a mess. Because you yourself have not given out an order in which the inmates feel come from you, that you believe in what's being done. So the internal justification brings about the consistency, literally, for it to be evergreen, at least every time you're on post. And listen, that can even happen even if you're just a one day a week or you're barely ever there, because the consistency is coming from you and the directives that you provide. So eventually when inmates will start to see you in the unit, they don't see a substitute. They just see someone, oh, we got Gangi today. Now, he may not work this unit every day, but Gangi's got character, got integrity, and these are his expectations. So once those, I mean, the funny thing is once you can't expect to have consistency with your partner, supervisor, whatever it is, unless you yourself are consistent with yourself. And that reputation will carry over with you, where even if I'm not the regular in the housing unit, you know what to expect from me, because I don't shift.
Yeah, you'll get that. I mean, you go in and you'll have some kid that's talking crazy, and you'll have another inmate that'll say, "Not today. Don't listen. We know we've worked with this guy before. He's gonna shut us down or whatever." Or just and they'll put pressure back on them, and that's awesome. Hey, and guys, thanks for all the comments. Mickey's in here. He says thoughts on shifts. Getting all together and talking on the housing with each other to run that housing and to have a dialogue. That's awesome. Communication is key. It's number one. It's how we're going to survive this thing. All right. I got a good one for you, Anthony. Mm-hmm. Lisa says, but if I do that, they won't like me.
Lisa, it's not about like, it's about respect. Okay. So
but she put puke emojis after that. Yeah.
I can't see the comments, guys.
No, I know. All right, here I got one from D-Man 77. He's comments a lot on my videos. He sends a lot of stuff. He says, "How do you improve your mentality after seeing your first body? After seeing your first." So
why don't you take the lead on this, Will? Because I caught myself out of respect. The fucking R for Russ was coming in. I want you to. I know. I caught myself, and I said, "Don't do it." So I've been conditioning myself. So, Will, obviously this is your.
You've been practicing.
Yeah, I've been practicing in the mirror every day. Every day I wake up.
Hey, you're sitting there, and your wife has a picture of me and a picture of Russ, and you're doing like a Rorschach test. You hold up Russ, and you're like, "Oh, Will, oh no, oh Russ."
But yeah, I caught myself today. Because I love doing this. This is a great thing we're doing every Sunday, is providing something great to the profession. But Will, since this is your wheelhouse, I'll piggyback. I do have something on this, but maybe you can go first, and I'll piggyback off of you because this is your expertise.
Okay. So D-Man, and it's like D-Man, right? I thought it was Demon at first, and so I was like, "Whoa, man, who's this guy?"
Damien.
It could be Damien. That's even worse.
But he was born in 77. He's our age, or my age.
Right. So he's angry and upset and has a mortgage to pay. Listen, seeing and I just talked about to the new hires last week about this. Corrections is a crazy career because you could go years without seeing your first body. You could go years without having to do CPR, and then all of a sudden you're right there. And the thing that I want you to understand is that death is weird. Seeing a dead body is weird. Watching somebody die is weird. Seeing your own boot prints in a puddle of blood is weird. And that's okay. Those are all natural reactions. The people that are around you that are acting unaffected, that's not. And those are things that will catch up with them later. But what I would say, man, is you're doing the right thing, right? You're putting it out there. You're talking about it, and understand that when you run into a situation like that, whether it's a body or it's a traumatic event, that those feelings may not surface for a while. They may come right away, and you may have trouble sleeping. You may be agitated. You may feel like maybe you could have done something differently to change the outcome. And those are all natural feelings, right? And so if you have people at your facility, if you have coworkers that you can talk to and discuss that, the last death that I dealt with, I had to deal with it on several levels, man. And I've seen a lot of dead bodies. Prior to corrections, I worked in a mortuary transport company. I mean, I've seen thousands of bodies, right? But after I did CPR, my first one, I wasn't okay, and I had to get a push from my coworkers, and then I had to deal with this on several levels, right? I had my coworkers who I talk to, who I trust, who trust me, and who know me and say, "Hey, Bill, you're not all right. Like you're different. You need to talk about this." And so I talked about it with them a little bit. I talked about the situation a little bit with home, not all of the things, right? Because it is what we do, right? We're protecting our spouses. But then I ended up going to see a counselor about it because I just couldn't shake it. And I don't know why I couldn't shake it. I've seen a lot of death. But this one, was a little different. And so my recommendation, man, is just to talk. Now that could be to your buddy, your neighbor, your priest, or a counselor. It's up to you to figure out kind of how, what level of assistance that you need, but know that's fine. I mean, that all of us need that sort of assistance. Some people are okay with just telling, kind of the dark humor about it in the office later, but when you're alone, when all the lights go out, when all your homeboys are gone, and you're kind of left alone with your thoughts, that's when you really need to say, am I okay with this? And if you're not, then you just go get help. And if you need assistance, if you need somebody to point you in the right direction, you can send me an email, you can text me, whatever, and I'll help. If I don't have the numbers in your area or know somebody in your area, I'll help you find those. So,
yeah, I love the advice here. So one thing is that when it comes to seeing a dead body, it's not something that you're ever going to get used to, or you shouldn't get used to.
Right.
A lot of people will try to say, well, this person did this, they're a pedophile and all this other stuff. And
right.
Still doesn't matter. A body is a body, regardless of what they've done, especially when your job is to bring that body back. So there's different levels of concerns here when it comes to dealing with the stress of having a dead body. One thing is it was your responsibility to keep that person alive, and you could take that as, regardless of what they've done, it was my responsibility. I get paid. This is my job. And
right.
I know some people that take obviously that aspect very seriously, to the point where, a dead body does affect them because they feel that they failed at some level, even if it was out of their control, even if the inmate found ways to do it that went around your routine.
Right.
Then you also have the fact of, are you going to get in trouble? Did I do enough that day? Is there something I missed? And the stress of, or the anxiety of not knowing what that outcome is going to be, because you're going to get Monday night quarterbacked. So I mean, that adds to that. And then you also have just the human element, the fact that, watching someone do it, regardless of what they've done, and just being limited as to what you can do at that moment, especially because sometimes you have to wait for the backup to come in. And, and you're sitting there doing your best talking, but it's not working. Or just seeing the dead body, and then even though the body could be dead for a while, you still got to make 100% effort. And the sounds, the smells,
right.
A lot of things. So one of the things is, first off, it's what Will said, to know that it's okay to feel something about it. And I don't care why you feel something about it. It's okay
right.
to feel something about it, because you're going to express why you feel a certain way about it. And that's great. That's what you should do. And the people that are around you should allow for that to happen. I mean, I also believe it or not, even when it comes to a death of an inmate, that there should be some critical incident response team that comes and talks to you, because believe it or not, I'm not saying it's undue, but personalities do have an effect on a unit. And then when an inmate dies, you lose out on that level of personality. That doesn't mean that it's undue. It just means it's a routine that's no longer there, or, a personality that did have an effect on the unit. But other than that, the key is that you have to allow yourself to go through the moments, knowing that you're not going to be able to go through it at that time,
right.
because you're expected to react and be that hero. But in the end, here's the sad thing. Sometimes when the moment passes, we think we're okay and we're not, and we don't let ourselves to think through it in a comfortable way. Now, I will say this: when you go to process what those concerns are, basically the moment has passed, you still have to kind of go through the head. You have to make sure you ask yourself the right questions in your head. A lot of times we get ourselves caught up in asking ourselves the wrong questions in our head that give us doubt and hesitancy, when technically what we need to do is we need to reevaluate the questions that we're asking to make sure that the questions are a little bit more positive and less judgmental, because we have our concerns right now. When we deal with something like this, our mind goes negative, and the questions that we ask are filtered through this negativity of just, what we could have done better, what we could have done, why are we at fault? Did we do something wrong? And these questions can cause doubt in what you do every day. So you have to also kind of look at the inward dialogue that you're having to try to build yourself to the next step, because this is going to happen again. So what I want to make sure that you're aware of is that the process that you're going through is not to set you backwards, but to move you forward. So you have to be aware that you're gonna ask yourself the right questions so you can move forward. But the key is processing it, but how you process it.
Well, and I agree, and I think that the key thing that you said there is if no matter what you feel, that it's valid, right? The scary thing is when you feel nothing, right? And we had a situation not too long ago, man, and we had an individual that was probably not going to make it, and an officer was expressing his desire to want to maybe be there when that happened, and I, there's anger there for something, maybe somebody took his book bag when he was in school or something, but there's some unresolved issue that he needs to work through, or maybe they're tired of seeing dead bodies, or maybe they're just tired of working all the time or whatever. But the thing is, if when these emotions surface and you have an overreaction or an underreaction to something, then that's when you need to go kind of seek out help. Hey, Lisa says she's trying to get ready for church, Anthony. She'd appreciate it. She's trying to get ready for church and listen to us. She'd appreciate it if you would, if you'd hurry it up. But no, I'm just kidding. Lisa, there's probably plenty of services. I'm going to go to church after this, so that's why we get up super early, and I'm just going to go in my t-shirt. So a little advertising, and
I'm on the East Coast, so I'm
myself.
I'm an hour ahead, Lisa. So you already went through church. Everything's good.
That's right. So there's a story out this week, and I'm going to put this up here. My buddy Tony here put this up here. He's taunting me a little bit and showing some concerns.
Nebraska.
Nebraska DOC just passed this monster contract that's going to make him like the third highest paid
in the nation.
In the nation, and they're jumping up, and this is jumping up $8 an hour. Overtime instead of time and a half is going to be double time. They transport people back and forth. There's a $15,000 signing bonus, and he wants to know what do I think about it, and wondering if it'll hurt the county and the other correctional facilities in the area. So Tony's a super awesome guy. He always his humor is similar to mine. It's very dark. It's very dry. So I love his delivery on a lot of stuff. But here's what I'd say. Good for them. Good for Nebraska DOC. I feel like this $8 an hour raise, although you guys are still all making less than me, is no, I'm just kidding. Is well worth it. I mean, you guys do a crazy job. I always say what I do is dangerous, but what you guys do is crazy, and you deserve it. I think that anytime, I think that all correctionals, what I hope this does is I hope it sets off a domino effect for other facilities, other agencies across the country, because this is national news now. I mean, this is in every feed, everything that I look at. I hope it sets off and other people say, hey, maybe we need to start doing what Nebraska is doing and paying these people what they're worth. Not only that, does Nebraska, I saw a post in the Correctional Officer Brotherhood, this lady, and I actually sent it to one of my lieutenants. And let me see if I can pull it up here real quick. This is riveting radio here. She said, if anyone is looking for a job, NDCS is hiring. Starting pay is $28 an hour, double time, hiring bonus. You can use me as a reference. She gives the schedule, great benefits. Start your career. Everyone is treated like family here. And I can tell you with my interaction with the guys and gals at Nebraska DOC is that they are. I mean, they are a cohesive group. I'm sure I'm going to get people that argue and so and so's an asshole and everything, but they're a cohesive unit, and they really, on the surface, from an outsider looking in, appear that administration is trying to help them, trying to show appreciation. They have a strong social media presence. They have, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and all of these things where they're showing you, employee of the month, officer of the year, hey, these inmates graduated GED. We had a Halloween, contest. The Nebraska does a ton of promoting of their facility. And so when we talk about it, and we've talked about over a couple of shows, how do we get people in the building? How do we retain staff? I think everybody should look at Nebraska, because they are at least saying, hey, look at us, what we're trying to do. Even if you get there and the job's still bullshit, which I don't know if it is or not, but they're at least actively trying to promote, actively trying to retain. And I think that's fantastic, Tony. I'm glad that happened. I'm glad you guys are getting paid what you're worth finally. And I hope it trickles, man.
Yeah, they for me, obviously everybody looks at the value behind something. So, it's good to see that Nebraska is moving it up to this level, because it shows that the profession does have some value and some worth. And it's good that we have people that believe in that enough to invest into that. The incentive to get people in this is great, because this will hopefully bring more qualified people. Again, it's not the sole incentive. Obviously, it's not just about the money, but that is the first thing that most people look at. So, it's great to see that they decided to jump this up, because now that's going to increase the chance to get good quality people in this profession. And for those that are going to argue it, I wouldn't even listen to that, because obviously no one's ever going to get an understanding of what we really do unless they're in this profession without cameras,
right,
and they just play the CO role or play whatever departmental role they want to enter. Because again, this profession has been very underestimated, very undervalued. So it's great to have someone who is probably listening to the front line, listening to the management. It's a shame that this choice came out of desperation, right? Because I would assume this should have been something that was recognized a while ago. But having said that, it takes one state to start the step to make that initiative, to where other states will be like, we got to follow suit. Now, granted, the motive behind it is because we're at this point where we have to. So it's sad that this wasn't recognized prior. But with that said, as long as we're moving forward, we can spend time later on kind of just reevaluating the motive. But this is a great step forward.
Right. And Lisa says it will only work if they treat their staff better. And I like what you said there. For me, it's like when you do charity work, people want to know, oh, well, so-and-so's just volunteering at the food bank to make themselves look good. Well, okay, you can focus on that, or you can focus on the fact that they've served, 80 families tonight, and those 80 families got their food. I mean, it's about your perspective.
Yeah, we can reevaluate the motive later. Just the key is, let's just appreciate the fact that we're making $8 more an hour.
Right. But I'll say this. I mean, this has been a hot topic at my job. And I'll tell you this, are there days that it feels like I'm stealing money for what I didn't have to do? Absolutely. Right. But then there's days that I wouldn't do this job for $100 an hour. I mean, there's days that you leave that facility and you're like, are you fucking kidding me? I don't know. So when I look at, $5 an hour raise, $8 an hour raise, $2 an hour raise, I mean, at a certain point in your career, the money doesn't matter, right? Because I'm not really, and I'm going to get all kinds of blowback from this, but I'm not, part of the reason that I'm at my facility is the pay, is the consistency, is the reliability of the job. But we're also working in a profession where we could be murdered at work. And so you have to have that why too. Like it's got to be kind of in your blood. So at a certain point that being said, at a certain point, if I feel like this job is not for me anymore, if I feel like the facility is just, a sinking ship, it doesn't matter if I get $8 an hour, $10 an hour, $20 an hour. It's not going to keep me. I mean, money at a certain point, money is not everything. And I hear that all the time. I'm like, people are like, well, I worked there for 20 years and I had to quit because of my mental health. I had to quit because my kids, whatever. I mean, if you talk to the veterans, I'm sure if you were to poll your facility, the new people coming in, the 5-year people, 3-year people, they're probably more excited about this $8 an hour jump than the guys that have been there in the trenches, for $20 an hour, or 20 years. Because honestly, I would be like, let me give you the salty old vet perspective. Well, why weren't you paying me this for 20 years? I mean, this is what I've been worth for forever. And now I matter to you. Now well, good. Okay. I don't mind missing my son's soccer game anymore because I'm making double time instead of time and a half. I mean, there's certain things that this is not going to change, but it's a good step in the right direction. And again, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's good that we covered the motive behind it too, because as I said, most people are. That's why I mentioned most people are going to question the motive. Why wasn't this here before?
Right.
But again, that why go backwards at this point? We could reevaluate that stuff later. Let's just kind of take what's being tossed our way, and then let's see how at this point it opens up the door to other things. So again, you're always going to have people that are going to, just it's never good enough. It's never good enough, but they also don't understand the obstacles or the effort it takes to even get a penny, let alone $8.
Well, so I want to know, like, throw in the comments if you, I mean, would a pay jump like that make you more satisfied? Would it make going into work less painful, less stressful? And have you heard about it? And what's your county doing? What's your facility doing? Your state doing to help keep you guys there to address retention? And if you guys aren't watching this live, if you're watching the replay, leave a comment. Me and Anthony are in the comment section. We live there. We're not hanging out with our kids, so we can just stay there and help cultivate this correctional community that we're building. But yeah, leave us a comment and we'll get back to it. I got it. So let's transition over to this, right? I got a concern from a guy who messages me, and he's super awesome. Matthew Griffin, you know him. He comments on Tier Talk all the time.
Sends me videos.
And me too. And I'll tell you what, here's what me and you need to figure out. We need to figure out how to get down there. We need to figure out how me and you can meet in the middle and have dinner with this guy. And
I agree.
And so that's something we're going to do. But he sent me this video the other night, and he wants to know, what can he do when he encounters an inmate who is, mentally challenged, an inmate who experienced a mental health crisis? He says, you know what? He's still learning the correctional officer part of the job. Right. And now he's thrust into this, mental health counselor type role. So what would you tell him, Anthony? And then I'll follow up. What would you tell him that he could do when he's encountering those type of people?
Well, one thing is, before you get directly involved, know where your resources are first, because you got to go in there with a plan, and you can't just go in there with the hopes of thinking you can give them the right direction. You really do have to go in there with a plan, which means that, especially if you work in one of those therapeutic communities, which are the special needs units where you're partnering with mental health and whatnot. We do have a lot of interactions with the inmates, so I know a lot of people will be quick to say defer to mental health. Yeah, I mean, but we don't even know what the concern is right now. Maybe not. Sometimes if you have a good working relationship with mental health, we could approach things together, and do what we can from a team perspective. So right off the fact, Matt, the first thing I would do is try to come up with a game plan. Now, you said that the individual's in crisis, so I mean, obviously there's different types of crises. So, talking to mental health, see who knows this inmate the best, try to get the best approach from someone who maybe has a working relationship with that inmate. Because I'm going to tell you something, when you go to deal with anybody in crisis, the first thing that comes to the surface level is the reputation of that person dealing with that individual. So right. I mean, me and Will discussed this way back when, is that I really can't, in prisons, it's definitely different than a jail, but maybe in the jail too. But in prison, inmates get to know you, within the defined role, but they get to know you. They get to know your character, what you're about. Yeah. So you could be trained in all this negotiation and crisis time, but if your reputation is crap, the training's not going to matter, because inmates are going to see right through every attempt that you're trying to make to build what would be considered an insincere or not so sincere connection. So one thing I would do is, I know jail may be a little bit different. I don't know how well the inmates, I don't know, some you may know, some you may not. So one thing is that you're going to have an initial approach. I think that's a lot different than a recurring approach. So like, if this is the first time that you're dealing with this inmate at this level, you definitely don't want to go at it alone. So talk to your people, talk to your supervisors, get to understand the resources. But more importantly, you got to have a plan of where you want this to head. You can't just go in and not know what the end game is. That's why you got to talk to all the resources, the people that are dedicated to the mental health profession as well. Because if you go in without a game plan, if you go in without understanding where you want it to go, then the person that's in the crisis has a good chance of taking control of that dialogue because you don't have an anchor. So use all your resources, develop an anchor, which will be your direction that you need. And then when you go in to have that dialogue with that inmate, no matter where the inmate tries to go, you can softly, from their perspective, bring them back to where it is that you need them to be. So technically you're going in with a control of the dialogue, but more importantly, connecting to that perspective with the resources that are around you. That would be my advice. Now, again, it's very general because the question itself is general. Right. But I think generally that would be a good initial approach if it's someone you're dealing with for the first time.
Yeah, and you're right. So just to let you know, at a county jail level, I've seen the same guys for 17 years coming in and out. Recidivism is terrible, and so we do over time. It's probably not as dynamic as a relationship that you would build in a penitentiary setting where the people never leave. But we learn a lot about each other. We learn a lot about people, and I want to share something, Matthew, and anybody listening is, sometimes the people that know these guys the best are us. We talked about earlier, like your consistent housing unit, like this is your place, and you interact with these people 40, 50, 60 hours a week for years. And you get to know their behaviors. Right. And so we had a situation one time where a gentleman was just going crazy, cussing up one side down the other, kicking on the door. And they called in mental health. The supervisor called in mental health. Mental health went up to the door and was there probably 45 seconds because this guy, called this woman everything but a child of God. And she said, well, I'm not going to talk to you if you're going to treat me like that, and left. Now, so then what happens, right? So now it's back on the officers, and you got to go in there and you've got to use that foundation, that reputation or relationship that you've built with that individual. And like Anthony said, where do you want, what's the end game here? Well, we want this guy to quit kicking on the door. We don't want him to get hurt. He's stirring up the other people, and so now we've got to figure out a way to bring that individual down. And I've talked about this a lot, but those kind of interactions start way before that guy starts kicking on the door, doing your rounds, saying good morning to people, talking, just being visible in the unit and having them know what what you stand for, all that helps. And so when you encounter an individual like that, then they feel comfortable talking to you, and you can work them back down to where you need them to be. And that's what, like Anthony said, we talked about this the other night, Anthony, is, they tell you a lot when you're dealing with somebody who, thinks they're in Mars, don't play into their hallucinations, and stuff like that. And that's true. I mean, you don't want to convince them that they're on Mars, but you also can't just keep telling them, hey, no, you're in jail. You're in jail. No, you're in jail. You're not on Mars. You're in jail. You got to do this. I mean, you may have to finesse it a little bit. So what I would say is, know your resources in your facility 100%, like Anthony said, but if you don't have any resources, then guess what? This is what's awesome about correctional officers. And this is why, I call this a profession. This is why I say this is an amazing thing that you guys do, because if you have a guy in crisis, guess who responds? You do. If you have a fire in your housing unit, guess who responds? You do. If you have a fight, guess who responds? You do. You do all of these things. And so just like, it may be in between sets of push-ups that you do on your day off, maybe watch a video about mental health intervention, or maybe take mental health first aid, or maybe watch a TED Talk on communication, or an episode of Tear Talk about communication, or read one of our books and just educate yourself so you can become part of that resource. You say, well, it's not my responsibility but you know what? It may fall on that. You're not going to diagnose this person. You're not going to be the, if an inmate says, hey, I'm going to kill myself, you're not the person who's going to determine if that's a valid threat or non. You defer to medical, you defer to your supervisor, whatever your process is. But even if that individual does go on suicide watch, you may still be working that housing unit. You may still have to interact with that person. You may still have to answer some concerns of that person. So know your resources, but understand that you yourself are a part of those resources. Does that make sense, Anthony?
Yeah, the 100%. I mean, I love also what you said about the metaphor with the Mars. I mean, understanding their perspective and then guiding them from their perspective out. I mean, that's the key. That's kind of like it's not a culture shock for them. I mean, we deal with it all the time. I mean, I'm on force hearings at my facility. I oversee some parts of the mental health department in regards to our therapeutic community, our inmates that do have special needs. So having said that, they firmly believe in whatever it is that they've created. So you going in there and telling them just the opposite, it doesn't work. It's not in the best way to de-escalate. Let's just do it that way. I think that's the best way to say it. It's not in the best way to de-escalate. So again, that's where it's good for you to have your resources too, because sometimes you could be walking into something and just what you represent, regardless of the reputation you have, could be what's causing the crisis. So you having that approach, having that understanding, talking to the mental health professionals, and then having a game plan really matters. Guys, I think that kind of goes what Will said real quick. Anytime you have communication with an inmate or an interaction that's meant to serve a purpose, you got to have an end game, because if you don't have an end game, then the inmate could take you down any path because you're not even driving the vehicle. So I would say anytime there's a communication, interaction, individual crisis or not, is that you have to make sure that it's your map you're following, which is the best way to do that is to be the one driving the vehicle.
Right.
You can't even give the car over to somebody else. You have to be the one driving the vehicle, because even if you start crossing into unknown territory, you could stop the vehicle just for a second, look at your map, and then try to figure out another route to get to where you have to go. But the key is having the outcome, having the end game that you have to head to. Because if not, if you don't have a North Star, then you're going to be lost. So I think it's just more about each time you have that dialogue to know exactly where you're headed and where you have to go.
And that's so. Here's what's scary. I mean, we talked about this before, the correctional objective, right? But the thing is the North Star has got to be part of your facility's correctional objective, right? If your North Star is to just go in and whoop that guy's ass, that's good. Like that's not, if that's where you're taking this interaction just because you want to take it there, then that's
right. So let me add to that. That's a good point, Will. Good point. So I can add on that, guys. That makes a lot of sense what Will's saying. So check this out, guys. So we talked about this once before, but you have a vision and you have a mission. If you don't know what the vision is, then you have no idea what the objectives are in regards to the missions you have to complete every day. So I like what you added there. So there are many routes to get to this vision. Obviously we deal with human behavior. So sometimes our mission on a daily basis could be complicated, but the mission is within context of the vision. So having said that, when I approach an inmate and I am trying to get to this destination that I want to get to, it's usually in compliance with the mission, which is in compliance with the greater vision. So yeah, 100%. But I would like to believe at this point, I definitely know Matthew as well, is that that is his end game somewhere along the line. He does want to get the inmate help. He does want to do what's better. I mean, the question right there is within context of someone who's like, hey, what can I do better to help this individual in crisis? Just like the other gentleman that asked, whatever, 77.
Damien
77.
The spawn of Satan.
Yeah, the spawn of Satan was well, maybe that's why he was asking about dealing with a dead body. But these are questions that we never asked ourselves before. So it's great to see that the mind has shifted, because to be honest with you, what I see from those questions that are being asked are questions that are geared towards the greater picture, the greater vision of what it is. So when I answer it like that, and Will, this is definitely a topic, maybe even later on in a video, is when we answer it like that, we can, I think for this case here, you could safely assume that the outcome does relate to the vision, because I wouldn't be asking that. But there are going to be some, and I love how we balance this out, where Yeah, you're right. You can't just pick any outcome. The outcome has to have a greater purpose in compliance with the daily mission, in compliance with the greater vision. So again, you have to kind of realize, and that's why you have everybody at the table. What it is that what is put it this way, it's not so much what it is that I need to accomplish. It's what is it that we need to accomplish. I think
Right.
that's the better part, because the I could be just shut the door and be done with it. This person's rather annoying. But having
Right.
said that, pushing that annoyance off to someone else and not solving the issue at whatever level that could escalate to doesn't solve the matter. So it's like having everybody at the table and say, how do you, or how should we approach this? And that's your destination as a we, as opposed to just an
Right.
I. Because
No, I like
sometimes,
that.
if I may, sometimes when we are in the I perspective, we tend to be selfish and take shortcuts. That's why it's good sometimes to get the we involved, so we all know that what we're doing provides us what we talked about at the beginning: consistency and expectations from each other that ultimately have a good result in the end.
Right. I like this comment from Javier Bustos. He's I don't know if you're familiar with the peer support couple. They go around, they tour, they talk about mental health, wellness, and
Yes, I remember you
police
mentioned them
officers.
as well too, right? On your
Fantastic
page.
people. Oh yeah, fantastic people. And he says COs need to remember to take care of their own mental health when always having to be exposed to others in mental crisis. And there's a reason, guys, that therapists see therapists. You have to unload this stuff. And I remember I had a situation, man, where I was at a door, negotiating, de-escalating, and I was there for a long time. And I walked away, and this female officer, she says, that was crazy. She goes, how do you have anything left when you go home? I said, I don't, but that's because I obviously I do. I have things now, I write about them, I talk about them, but we give up so much of ourselves emotionally to these situations, right? It to me, these are just as taxing for me as a fight. You get down, you're wrestling, your adrenaline's dumping, you're out of breath, you're out of energy. But when you really go and you're invested in the outcome and you're de-escalating and you get that weapon without force and you do those kind of things, man, it wears you out too. So those, and that's why I named this book part of this, The Nothing That Never Happened, is because just because you don't get in a fight doesn't mean that nothing happened to you. Right. So you have to, Javier's right, man, 100%. And if you guys get a chance, go over to the peer support couple, that peer support, I'll put the link in the description here. Check out their Facebook page. They have lives that they do. They go around, tour, and talk. They're awesome. They're awesome people. Javier and Kathy. But check them out. But that's 100% right. Here's a crazy comment too. Look at this revolutionary comment. How about just be a decent human being? And try to help in every situation. I think that's great. Guys, we are in the people business, right? And so if you attack that, and listen, I had a situation where I went and here, let me throw up Joe's comment here. Treat them humanely. I don't think it's wrong to ask how they're doing or what's up, what's going on. Let me give you a fun little story here. I had an individual that was in my housing unit, and I would always go around. I like interacting. I like mingling. And I would say good morning to him every day. And he'd never talk to me, never say anything back. And after he left our facility, he went to another facility, and he murdered a doctor. He killed somebody. And I was like, holy crap, man, I'm glad that I talked to that dude. I don't know if it helped. I don't know if that other person was just a trigger for him. I don't know. But interacting, communicating, effective communicating, being able to, like Anthony says, drive that vehicle, right? To not be manipulated, right? And to know where the conversation, it's okay to be in a conversation with somebody, but know where the conversation's going, know what the purpose of that conversation is going, and you're just going to be fine. I want to add one more. This is a great tip too, from Robbie. And I work with her. She's fantastic. I don't know if this all fit up there. Yeah, it'll fit up here. It's a great comment. She talks about the housing units a little bit. And at the bottom, it says, make sure there's one person speaking to the inmate so that inmate could try to focus. Right. And so have you guys been in a situation where you're surrounded by people. There's an inmate that's kicking on the door, banging on the door, or whatever. It could even be a use of force situation. And there's 10 people that are yelling directives. There's 10 people that, if you have a point person, if Anthony's at the door and Anthony's communicating and he is working on, whatever's happening with this individual, then I'm going to let Anthony do that. I'm not going to be behind him on his shoulder looking and saying, come on, dude, just do what he says. Oh, come on, man, just do it. Come on, man, you did it for me yesterday, dude. That's too much going on, especially if a person's having an episode. Gosh, they may already be hearing voices, and now you got 15 COs, and they're all pissed off. So when you're dealing with a situation, even a use of force situation, you have one point person that's supposed to talk, that's supposed to communicate. Let that person do their job. Let that person work on that until they feel like they can't do it anymore, until that person's relieved. But if it, and Anthony, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've had this where I've been talking with an individual 15, 20, 30 minutes. And then I have an officer come from nowhere. What's going on in here? Why are you, and I'm like, hey, get out of here. Because then the focus gets off of me. It erases what we've been building. And now they're focused on, and like you said earlier, maybe you're part of the problem, and maybe that inmate is fired up because of the interactions that they've had with you. So be able to step away from that and let that person, that's a great comment, Robbie. Let that person do what they, go ahead.
Yeah, because the great thing about what she said also is they're building a trust between the two parties. And when I say trust, I mean the inmate's trying to trust the staff member, and we're trying to trust that the inmate's going to do the right thing at this moment. That's what we're working for, the compliance. You know what I mean? So as you're building that chat, when someone comes in, they can mess with everything. The temperature that was just set, the tonality, where the dialogue was going. I mean, most of the time, the people that do that at the last minute, they're very me people. They walk into a room and it's not about the other person; it's about them. So when they come in, they're quickly to get the attention right on them, as that they're the person to solve the issue. And it's like, we've been working on this for however long, and sometimes this is a process here. I remember, being called to scenes as an officer working at a female facility, and I was a great communicator. And sometimes I could just walk in. I had a good reputation, and the inmate would, once they saw me, hey, Gange, what do you need? And I'll be able to move forward, quickly. And then there was some where you needed to have the dialogue. And I remember one incident where there was an inmate who, was going through whatever it was that they were going through. And we were having this dialogue. And the dialogue I felt was pretty good. It was more about, she's trying to move forward. And no matter what things she was trying to do, she would always find herself going back to impulses, which would be to fight or to do stuff, because she was more about pride. And it's hard to give someone advice when they're in a world that wants them to do the opposite, so you have to remind them that nothing you're going to do at this point is going to be easy, but again, you're not doing it for everybody else to see. You're doing it to know that you can. So this is a great way amongst the struggle of it all to really define who you need to be, because if you could make this adjustment here, then on the outside would be 10 times easier, and again, it's not about how people view you. It's about what you need to do for yourself. So we're having this great dialogue, and the inmate's starting to get an understanding of these expectations that I feel she's very capable of meeting, as long as, you're not influenced by anything that's negative towards the dialogue that we're going to have conflict of this growth. So I remember this officer who was all about him. We kind of talk about charisma, right? So lack of charisma is walking into a room saying, there I am, as opposed to having charisma and saying, hey, there you are.
Right.
So this person comes in, here's the dialogue for a couple of minutes, and then literally gets in the middle and says, Gangi, that's not going to work for people like that, because you have no idea what they've been through, because you're not from the hood. And I was going to say, wait a second, hold on. First off, don't judge me. I said, second thing is, listen, I'm trying to get their perspective to move forward, not to look back. Everything that you want them to do right now is to look back and blame someone for their circumstances. I'm trying to tell this person that they're responsible for their own choices. So regardless of where they've been in the past, usually most of the people focus on that because they want something to blame when they don't move forward. You know,
Right.
so understanding where she's been, I get it, but I'm not there to stay there that long.
Right.
I'm there to get that understanding from her perspective, and not from you and what you feel it should be like. Because to be honest with you, you're only getting involved in this dialogue because you want to brag that you've had a tough life. And this isn't about you. And that's the other thing I've learned too, guys, is the moment when you're addressing a concern and the person you're addressing it to makes it about them. Well, let me tell you, I went through this too, and blah, blah. It's not about you. It's about the person having the concern. So again, it just, sometimes people mess with the momentum, and it could be very, very frustrating. But in the end, I want people to realize something. In the end, guys, we have to kind of work together. And I love what Will said. If you have that person that's good at communicating, let them do it.
Right.
Let them get it done. And then if there's a concern, at least we provided our best effort. But that's just wanted to share that story. I thought that was a unique story. You kind of triggered it.
No, it's a great example, and so you guys just need to understand that there's just don't interrupt, like don't get in there, and if it's we're trying to meet the correctional objective, we're trying to get the team through it. It's not about you and you may feel like you have a great rapport or understanding of what helps this individual, but you also have to trust that the person at the door, that the person has been put in place to handle this situation, can handle it. And I'm gonna tell you, I could stand there, listen to Anthony talk, and I could think of 1,000 things that I would say, a different approach that I would take. You know what? And the same with him. He could listen to me and he'd be like, "Well, I wouldn't say that," or why is it taking him so long to go through this? But you have to trust the process, right? We all have our skills, but the one thing that you can't do is step in and say, "Hey, that's not going to work." Hey, because I know exactly, I'm driving the vehicle. I know where it's going. And so you play your role, do what we need you to do. I'll do what I've been told to do, and we'll get there, and we'll survive the day, and it'll be great. So now,
Yeah,
I mean,
it is case by case, Will. I mean, as I
right.
said, I love what you said. You know, the point is, you also learn a lot from failing.
Right.
So to sit there and maybe, I mean, as long as it's not drastic, you could sit there and say, wow, I see why that won't work. And that betters the game. And also that brings about consistency too. Because Will has an approach. I have an approach, one right, one wrong. It really doesn't matter. It's the approach that's needed at that time, which has to be adaptive, So maybe Will is good with someone that I'm not, because there's that person's, I just can't connect to that person, as hard as I try. And then that's why you do need people, but you also need people who are sincere in this, that, have an honorable reputation. Right. That matters to me. You're not just training. I want to do something else. Yeah, but you know what? Right. Your reputation right now, it's going to lessen what's going to come out in regards to the training that you're going to have to utilize. Because if your reputation, especially when it comes to crisis, if you're that jokester and you never take anything seriously, and all of a sudden you want to now take this and be a negotiator. Well, your first 10 years has set a horrible foundation for you, that no matter what you can ever learn at this point, you could be the best at it. But the inmates will not see you as sincere. And unfortunately, at this point, the investment of that training would not be best utilized for you. Actually, it just was never a strong point for you. But now you have Will, who has the character and has the integrity and has the respect and trust. We can cultivate that. So I'm going to invest training in that. Now, mind you, people are like, well, everybody can grow. I get it. But we also have to realize some people have strengths. And some people just, no matter what you do, out of 10, there'll always be a 4. So at one point, it's, maybe just for this, I'm going to let this person do this instead. But Will, he's already at an 8 on this. Let's go the distance with Will. If I have to choose between Will or this guy, I'm going to go the distance with Will on this.
No, it's 100%. And one of the things that I think that supervisors, fail at is not using their people appropriately. And so part of that though is officers and individuals knowing what their strengths and weaknesses are. Obviously the reputation at my facility for me is that I'm a talker, that I'm the guy that if you need to come in and to show some empathy and to try to get this person to comply without force, then I'm the person you call. And it's taken me a long time to get there, and I take that very seriously. A use of force guy, they're geared a different way, right? We all have our way that we think this is going to end, and where we're trying to push the outcome. And there facilities, whether you like it or not, facilities are kind of getting away from just opening up the door and cuffing and stuffing somebody. They because they understand the mental health concerns. They understand that those interactions affect the overall tone of the facility, and that short-term, you said it last time, what short-term decisions can have long-lasting ramifications.
Right.
So going at, you getting visibly frustrated, you just straight up talking shit, because I spend 40 minutes out of my day trying to de-escalate to get a person to go to court peacefully, where you could have solved that problem in 7 minutes and go in and just force them to do something. That's not always how you win the day. And when I talk about earlier, I always say this: the interaction that we're having right now didn't start today. This is like Anthony said, if you're known as a heavy-handed officer for 10 years of your career, and then all of a sudden you come up and you want to ask a person, hey, what's bothering you today? You seem upset. You're not going to get the reaction that you want, right? And then it's going to get frustrated, and you're probably going to get frustrated, and you just need to be honest with yourself, and then trust the process. Trust that your supervisor is going to put the proper people in place, and then honestly, it's a team effort, right? So if I know that Anthony's better at handling a situation than I am, like you said, it's not about me. It's not about Will getting the glory here. It's about everybody going home safe. It's about that inmate, being safe. It's about, getting through the situation so we can get on to the next one. And if he's better at it, she's better at it, then let him do it. It's not a big deal. We're all on the same team.
It's about the appreciation over the recognition. So one of the things, I actually did a poll 2 days ago. We had about 301 votes. Do you think the position you currently have at your prison or jail gives you a chance to utilize all your skills and abilities to shine, and better yet, enjoy the work you're doing? So 301 votes, 12% said don't matter, 29% said yes, I'm in a position that enables me to do that, and then 59% said no. So I want to mention something, guys. So I read a lot of leadership books. John Wooten. Now, I'm not a big fan of basketball, but he was a famous college coach, and his leadership style is actually reflected in a lot of books that I read, from Maxwell to Tony Robbins, Simon Sinek. So basically, he did something unique about position. He said, as a good leader, you have to know where your people's best positions are, and of course, that's by knowing them, right? And how we did it is, in basketball, is he would take, he had some good teams. I believe they won 4 straight championships at one point. 88 games in a row. So he knew the power of positioning people. And what he would do is, just to show kind of, I guess make them a little bit humble, is that when they were in the right position, they could excel. But then when they would play their B team, so, the stars sometimes will play up the bench, whatever it is, he would have the star players switch their positions. And they would lose all the time to the second string. So it would always show you the value of being in the right position.
I like that.
That's where you're. Yeah, it's a pretty cool story, he said, because now you have someone that, like even Michael Jordan, he's great, but put him as the center.
Right.
And it's about knowing your position. But again, it doesn't mean that we don't try to grow. It's not saying that. But in some cases here, guys, is that we spend most of our time working on our weaknesses, that we don't develop our strengths. So the problem here now is that I could literally excel at this. There's another story they do about these different animals that have these different gifts. But what happens here, I can't explain it. Like, let's say something with a duck who's an expert swimmer, but in order to get good grades in school, he has to be able to climb a tree. So he spends all this time trying to learn how to climb a tree, and then he lessens his chance to be a good or great swimmer. So we have to kind of know where our strengths are and be able to cultivate that as well, and not just say, well, I'm weak in this area, but I'm strong in here. Let me only build on my weaknesses. No, build on your strengths, because a good supervisor is going to know where to best position you. And plus, as Will said, we're a team. So we're not going in an isolated fashion thinking I'm going to be the best at everything. No, because even as you move up, guys, believe it or not, the people that move up, they really probably only are good at maybe 2 or 3 things, but they're really good at it.
Right.
Like, I believe my level as administration, I believe it will. I'm a very good communicator. I know how to utilize my people to the best of their abilities, and then to the needs of what I need to get done, facilitating the needs of the house. And that's what moved me up. But if you ask me if I could run some of the departments I oversee or help facilitate, no. But it's not my job to. That's the funny thing. It's not my job to tell social services. It's not my position to tell them, hey, you're doing this wrong, and you're the transitionals or this, or I'm going to go teach your programs today. No, that's not my job. My job is to facilitate the needs in their house and let the departments do what they can to the best of their ability. So again, guys, it's really playing your position, and then knowing, believe it or not, like knowing that Will's a good communicator and respecting the fact that Will's a good communicator means that when I come in the scene, I don't try to outshine him. This is his area. But now, don't get me wrong. If I'm working with, let's say Russ, and we're doing some searches, holy shit. I mean, that's even when we do shows, me and Will know when we do a show to step back. And like, if you wanted to ask me questions about equipment and all this other stuff, don't know it.
Right.
I got Russ for that. You know what I mean? Or, mental health, don't really know it. I got Will for that. I mean, but that's because I'm playing my own role. So again, we could always build. I'm not saying that, but in the process, guys, cultivating your strengths, especially on a team thing. If you're part of a team, there's nothing wrong with cultivating your strengths, because that will make you better. And you can also educate and bring value. But in the end, guys, a lot of our times we spend a lot of time focusing on our weaknesses, that we don't bring our strengths up to the potential where they could be. So, again, Will's a great communicator. If I sense that and I saw that, because guys, I'm going to tell you something too. Just came to my mind. A lot of us in corrections have to adapt and adjust. And a lot of that comes from, yes, I mean, maybe there's some things you could teach, but most of the time it really comes on intuition.
Right.
Now, if you notice, we're faced with a lot of different scenarios every day. And you notice that sometimes I may have the insight and I'll be like, okay, you know what? Let's do this. Where'd you get it from? I don't know. I just know if this makes sense. And it turns out to be a great idea, or maybe it's a different approach. All of a sudden I'm struggling. I can't think. And Will comes in and says, you know what? Intuitively, let's do this. And it's like, well, where'd that come from? I don't know. You know why, guys? When you're put in your area of giftedness, intuition's automatic. So sometimes we don't even realize it until we're put in a scenario, and then all of a sudden our gut starts to speak these things. Is because we don't constantly aware that we're in our area where we're the best at. And all of a sudden, if I'm going to sit there and question what Will said because it didn't come from me, well, guess what just happened? Even as a supervisor, I stopped what could be the best possible solution. So again, I think if you're able to know your people and know their areas of giftedness, you could put them in spots where when something happens, they just intuitively are connected to the scenario. And you want to hear something great, guys? They don't have to sit there and break down. It just comes automatically. And then later on, they can kind of ask the what if, like, where'd that decision come from? Because they saw everything. And you know what it is, guys, too? That intuition comes from connecting the gaps. So sometimes if you're in areas of your strength and you're doing that, that becomes routine. And you don't even realize you're connecting it. It's running in the back of your mind on automaticity, automatically. And then what happens here, guys, is that you're just on point intuitively. And guys, intuitively in your area of giftedness. And yet we spend all these times trying to work on our weaknesses. I get it. But if you don't get a chance to develop those areas of strength where you could be a 10 at, I mean, think about that. Think about this, the growth that you're not allowing yourself to reach. I mean, even now at this higher position, I may say that I've excelled on certain things. That's because it runs automatic, because I'm put in an area where I'm actually able to utilize it.
Right.
So yeah, I just thought that was a great, however we got into that dialogue, that was really good.
Yeah, I don't know how we end up where we ever end up, but and I'll say this, the thing with your poll is what is it? 59% of people feel like they're not being utilized to their best ability.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
How disheartening is that?
Yeah, very disheartening. And so, but what I would say is this: is first of all, are you are you being honest? Like, are you saying, well, they're not using me to my best ability? Do you actually have that ability? And if you do, you have to, guys, you have to position yourself, right? I mean, it's like to go back to the basketball reference. If you're second string, but you're good, you're the best, then when you get out and you practice, you got to practice hard. You got to dive for the ball. You got to work harder than the guys that are doing it. So if you have this talent, if you have this drive, this passion, if you have a skill that you think could make the place a better, safer place, you got to find a way to get seen. You have to do it. You have to schedule a meeting with an administrator. You have to come up with a project. You have to do something, right? If you feel like you have this skill, or do it on the lower level. We have, one of the beautiful things about our facility is we don't run into egos very much. Like when we have a medical emergency, I have seen junior officers run that medical emergency. Obviously there's a supervisor and they're overseeing everything, but if the first person on scene is doing it, they're handling it, they're able to tell one officer, hey, go secure the rest of the day room. Hey, can you start writing down a list of everybody that was here? If they have that kind of foresight and that leadership, then we let them go, do it, handle it. Obviously the supervisor's there as a safety net and doing the calls and stuff, but why would you stop that and say, you know what? No, hey, that's not your job. Why don't you go shag the doors and I'll kind of stumble over myself here to make sure everything's good? I mean, but people will do that. I mean, there's people that would genuinely be like, hey, I'm the supervisor, I'm not supposed to. But like I said, my experience is that it's cool that people, you can kind of see in those situations, people's talents surface. And you just got to look, guys, there's got to be a way that you can showcase your talent. And if it's something that you're passionate about, write a paper, write a proposal, do something. And it's one of the things we asked you guys last week is we talked about, we're kind of sitting around, we're kind of commiserating with each other about, the facility doesn't do this for me, administration doesn't do this for me. And so me and Anthony tasked you guys last week. We said, hey, what have you done? And what will you do this week to make your facility a better place, a happier place? Motivate your staff, and then let us know what you did. And I didn't get one email. I didn't get one comment about, hey, this is what I did this week. And I'm wondering if they just didn't do it, if they didn't comment, or what. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you sit and do nothing, then nothing's going to happen.
Well, can I add something? When you're with the officer, when you're going through the emergency situation, that's the moment where all the practice comes into fruition. I mean, that's, I'm trying to remember the boxer that said it. I want to say it's Joe Frazier. But basically, when the spotlight's on you, that's really just a kind of like the result of what the practice has been. I mean, the real effort is when nobody's seeing, that's what, so again, if you have these areas of strength and you don't cultivate and you don't help that potential, then you're right. When the emergency situation happens, or you don't put the effort in, the emergency situation happens, it kind of showcases, who you are, and what you're actually capable of. So 100% guys, if you do have an area of strength, don't get me wrong, there's always a way to be balanced, but if you're on a good team, there's a way where, people can balance that. But in the meantime, you still have to be able to pursue those areas of strength, because if you're that person that's good at finding things, then I want to cultivate the shit out of that.
Right.
I don't want to say, hey, I know you're great at this, but maybe it's time that you don't worry so much about this and worry on your communication. But that's not where, that may not be where it's in them, I mean, don't forget, a lot of these people that are great at what they do is because there's something inside of them that you can't teach. So now what did I just do is I stopped this person from being the best, which can only help the team, and say, yeah, you're good at this, but I want you now to take some time away from that and do this. Guys, I may not be 100% for that. I'm not saying that he can't learn a little bit, but let's be honest. if this person's an 8 or a 9 here, I want this person to go through the roof, because there may be a chance that a person that, like, I'll be honest with Russ has a lot of talents, but his thing is really searches and stuff. And that's why he's able to be where he's at, give us the experience, find the amount of contraband that he's done just by looking at inmates.
Right.
Like looking at fucking inmates, I mean, that's intuitive, but that's because he was given an area where he could always develop his strengths to the next level, as opposed to someone saying, yeah, you're too good at that. Let me give you a breather on that now. And let's go. Now you become a communicator. Most likely, to be honest with you, the person who does the searches aren't the ones that's going to be able to communicate with the inmate, because there's, this is what this guy's here for, which is a very important piece of the puzzle. So all I'm saying is, guys, if you're a supervisor and you have the position, and you have the ability to position people into areas of strength, I get the fact that we also want to teach them other avenues. So I'm not denying that. But if you got someone that's really gifted in something, and this is their goal, let me tell you something, man. Be careful how much you pull them away from that, because they could bring that to the next level, and you're denying that.
Right. You're not going to take Russ off the yard and make him the peer support coordinator. You're just not going to do it. I mean,
and Russ wouldn't feel it. I mean, don't get me wrong. He loves his people, but his heart is, you know why? Hey, Will, that is phenomenal. Let me just tell you why. I'm going to give a metaphor with that. Can I tell you why, guys? And I think Will spelled it out. Let's do Russ for a second. Russ is our man for searching, right? So let's say we tell Russ, you know what? Because don't forget, sometimes we build respect and credibility. Oh, thanks, Caitlin. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't get to see the comments because Will doesn't allow me, so I have to constantly on my phone. But check this out. Will, you made a good point. I got to bring this up. So let's say sometimes we're really good at what we do, that people automatically think that we have expertise in other areas. And here's the funny thing. So gangs actually first for me. Then it was manipulation, and now I'm crossing into leadership. Now, by the way, I intentionally grew myself. I believe in self-growth. So when someone said, hey, you wrote a good book on manipulation, do you think you could teach a course on leadership? I don't know. Let me make an effort before I teach. Let me see if I'm interested in it. So all of a sudden, what I did was, like you guys can see behind me, I read tons of books. And I started finding ways that I can apply it. So a few years later, I felt comfortable into crossing into maybe some leadership stuff. I'm also in a leadership position, so I have some opportunity to do so. So again, the manipulation book was my final attempt to say, you know what, let me get that done. I think I did pretty good with that. So now I'm going to cross into this. But if I felt that I couldn't, or I wasn't passionate about it, and by the way, this is my next love until there's something else that comes across, because I'm constantly growing. And I enjoy growth. If I feel that at any point something stagnates me, ultimately it's like, you know what? I'd rather do something else. Now, mind you, there is a general to this, though. The general is I like serving others. Right. So it whatever it is, the manipulation, the gangs, the leadership stuff, it's being filtered through. I'm still being able to serve the profession, still being able to serve others. Now, I want to mention something on that. There are some people that have that generality. I do. But there's some people that are specific, and again, they happen to love what they do, and it makes the facility better. Now, I'll check this out. I could picture Russ being this great search person, which he is. His knowledge on this has strengthened the channel, strengthened the venue. I would like to think strengthened the profession long since he's been retired. Now, imagine if in his career, they said, hey, listen, we know you have an influence because of these searches that you do, because you can build credibility and people tend to respect you because of the hard work you do and the safety that you've now provided to the facility. Mm-hmm. We would love for you to be a peer support person. Now imagine this, Russ, in his service to others, I could see him saying, you know what, I could do this. Then when he goes to kind of try to give it 100%, he's going to look back at the searches. He's going to always look this way because that's where his heart is.
He's patting down the people he's talking to.
But the thing is that it's going to be hard for him to give 100% effort to this because his heart is here.
Well, and that's the same thing. You're exactly right. I mean, there's been times that I've, that we've done shows or we've had conversations, and it's like, or I'll get a comment and the guy's like, hey, can you talk about, tactical handcuffing? And I'm like, no, I don't want to. I mean, I guess I can, but I don't want to because I'm going to, honestly, every conversation I have, I'm going to steer back to mental health and emotional survival in this profession, because that's where my heart is. And so we can talk about the other nuances of corrections, and that's great. And I can give my input on that. But like you said, Anthony, it's where your focus is. Your focus is helping people, providing information to people, helping people survive this profession. Now, whether that's talking about manipulation, helping people support, finding people out in the correctional atmosphere and bringing them in, bringing that information out to other people. I mean, that's the goal. That's the passion, to make this place a better place. Yeah. So I have to go. I got to go to church, and I'm going to join Lisa. Lisa's actually waiting out in the car for me to go to church. So do you have any final thoughts for these great people on this fine Sunday morning?
Yeah, hopefully we'll see you next Sunday. I'm also doing some lives throughout the week on my channel as well. I'll try to see if I can do one Thursday night. Get Will aboard, and Will schedules too is a little tricky. Yeah, I mean, the key is a great dialogue at the very beginning. We did touch on the topic of being consistent in a housing unit. So the first 20 minutes does relate to what you guys are looking for if you're clicking into the title. And other than that, it's wherever the audience takes us. And again, I learned from every dialogue. So thank you.
Yeah, guys, check out, if you haven't got a chance to, check out Anthony's book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded. It's on Amazon. And honestly, man, one of the coolest things, if you go to Amazon, and search one of our books, The Nothing That Never Happened to Me, it'll say items frequently bought together, and it's they're right there. And there's several correctional authors, but if you got a chance to check out the books, go check out the books, and then let us know what you think. Send us an email. Anthony, what's your email?
Gangi Anthony at yahoo.com.
Gangi Anthony at yahoo.com. I'm justcorrections@gmail.com. Subscribe. Listen, here's the thing. We need to support each other on these adventures. We need to get the knowledge out there. So groups like Correctional Officer Brotherhood, Keepers of Chaos, Anthony's YouTube channel, Tier Talk, Just Corrections, let people know about them. Subscribe, comment, engage, and then let us know. Let us know what you want to hear, what you want to talk about. We love this engagement, this back and forth on Sunday morning. That's kind of why we started doing it. And yeah, we'll hope to see you guys next Sunday. So one more time, I want you guys to go out to do something this week to make a difference in your facility, to make a difference in the lives of your brothers and sisters that you work with in a positive manner. And that's it. And I gotta go. And I'm gonna go work on my strip searching. Russ is gonna do a private lesson with me this afternoon. We're gonna do live strip searching on YouTube.
I would watch. But
all right, guys, you have a great weekend. Until next time, be smart, stay safe, stay sane. We'll talk soon.